that was the moment when it was like, okay, this is legit. And from that point on, we haven't looked back. 10 minutes at 80% completed, that's pretty good. When you accumulate that over the course of 50 to 60 components, then the savings are huge.
This is how I vibe design.
In this episode, we talked to TJ, who is a designer turned CEO of Southleft. With over 20 years of experience as a front end engineer and design systems strategist, TJ's experiments focused on AI infused workflows that bridge design and engineering. He's created tools like FigmaLint, Story UI, and Design Systems Assistant MCP to help product teams ship faster and more consistently. Today, we talk about how the role of Figma has changed in building design systems, what is the difference between vibe coding and contextual engineering, and how he uses Figma MCP, Cursor, and the concepts of atomic design in his AI workflow.
Awesome. Let's start. How did AI happen in your workflow?
How far back should I go? So AI in our workflow has been around since, I guess, when GitHub Copilot came out. But I suppose there was some really minor drops of AI that was leveraged in our code. We use VS Code for the most part here, and it was like line by line AI type stuff, like enhance this line or make this functionality more efficient. It was handy to have when you saw like in our code editors, you like a little squiggly red line under some stuff, and like it might be a warning or an error, and then we highlight over it and go fix with Copilot, and then it'll just do it. But personally, it was like when DALL-E came out, I thought that was cool because I was having a lot of fun just creating images and just seeing what that was doing.
So when did it shift from being just about cool stuff to actually using it in your work?
Uh, So OpenAI was the first one to have ChatGPT, and it was probably it was either when Copilot started to build features in like a little bit
Mhm.
more robust, or when OpenAI came out with ChatGPT, because then we shifted from things that were happening inside your code editor that had the ability to have the Copilot extension enabled to actually asking questions in like the GPT text prompt saying like, hey, I wrote this function. It's probably a smarter way to like loop through this array and merge these, like whatever it is. And then that was it. So then that part essentially got rid of us querying things on Stack Overflow. I was like, Stack Overflow is like everybody would go there and like, because somebody had asked this question before, because what I'm going through,
Yes.
I'm sure I'm not the first person. So, and then thinking like, okay, well, LLMs mostly got like a ton of their coding information from scouring the forums, all the boards on
Yes.
Stack Overflow. So I'll just cut out the middleman and go to go to ChatGPT and see what it gives me. And so at that point, I still wasn't writing like even full portions of applications in ChatGPT. It was mostly the technical architecture was there mentally, and like we already had it stubbed out and in various tech doc specifications, taking chunks of it and saying, validating things, or like give me a like workshopping ideas, like what's a better way to, should I be using the switch case to do this or a try catch it, like all these other things. Down the line is really when like we started to see like the velocity pick up on, I would say after Claude came out. Because Claude came out with like, I guess it was like Haiku in some of the earlier models, and
Mhm.
that's when Claude started positioning itself as like the one that you use for
Yeah.
code. So then we started to switch to that, and then we're finding like, I don't know, we got more and more brave with the questions that we asked, and then the code we using from it, and that started the love affair with Claude for me. Like that's when I thought I was all in on Claude for everything until both models, both companies started to like focus on different aspects of what users really wanted, and then it bifurcated. And now ChatGPT is more, I'd say OpenAI AI in general has been more for like personal therapy than and like workshopping ideas. And then
Yes.
Claude Code is like all technical, like everywhere from like writing requirements documents to, workshopping a technical architecture for a particular code stack or a project or application to writing it for me, like writing full sail, like giant applications.
Yes. Yeah. You mentioned that you don't see this as vibe designing or vibe coding, but you see it more like contextual engineering. And I'd love to hear more about that. How do you define the difference between these two terms and why do you prefer one over the other?
Um, I think they're different, and I think the reason to start in one way or the other usually have different purposes.
Mhm.
So to me, vibe coding is something that I don't know a lot about, and I want to workshop the idea while I'm building the thing. So if I'm gonna go, and like most vibe coding things I do are probably going to be done on like Replit, Bolt, Lovable, V0, those tools.
Mhm.
And it's usually with the purpose of creating like an actual thing, like, and it's usually one person. Like a vibe
Yeah.
code session is like you and the thing that you're doing it with, whatever code generator you're working with. And I won't deny that there were lots of moments when because I knew how to do it, I knew exactly what to ask. So the
Mhm.
conversation did go from vibe entry or vibe based prompt, like I feel like it should do this, or
Yeah.
to contextual based prompt, because then I'll say
Mhm.
something like, uh, we should swap out that node package to use this one because it's better at understanding X. And so there was a little bit of like experience that I had to pump into it. And then when I got to the database side and there was like authentication pieces, I was like, well, we should allow SSO through Google. Like using terminology that probably wouldn't be part of common day. Vibe coding is
Mhm.
mostly like common day, like
Makes
vocabulary that you
sense.
would be using to try to like
Mhm.
put your feelings into what you think this thing should be doing. Contextual engineering is starting off with the requirements. So
Mhm.
in to build the requirements, you have to put on the hat of like a product owner, and you're understanding what it's like to like build out a feature set for an application. So it helps to have the context of what it's like to work in an enterprise level organization on like how sophisticated and complex apps are built. So you're
Mhm.
going through and you're kind of creating user stories like you might be in an agile fashion. So like as a user, I can dictate to the application. As a user, I can do all these things. And then you put
Mhm.
on your architect hat. So you create like an architecture requirements
Yeah.
doc and you say, I want this tech stack to be React based. I want it to use Tailwind for styling. I wanted to use Next.js application for site building. And so you just kind of spec out the whole thing. And then I use Claude to help me refine that. So we'll workshop back and forth with Claude to ensure that I'm not missing anything.
Mhm.
So that's the
I'd love to
difference.
see some parts of your context engineering process.
Yeah. So this is Figma. Everybody knows what this is. I'll take you to the entire AI stuff that we've been creating within the context of design systems. So let's say
Okay.
I like to use this banner component
Mhm.
because banner, it's not an atom because like those really quickly just like churn out, but it's not quite like an organism if we're using atomic
Mhm.
design methodology.
Yeah.
So it's got some other pieces to it, various different styles. It's got an interaction. It has an expandable and collapsible ability. So the first thing I want to call out is that these are the properties that are very important because this is the stuff that travels through the Figma MCP, which is
Mhm.
the tool that we're going to be using to translate this Figma comp into actual code.
Mhm.
And I just want to call out that these are a lot of the different properties that have been added to here. And this is also another very important part. I want to call out that this is the description piece. So the whole component is getting, there's a lot of times in these conversations to talk about things like purpose and intent. And it's typically things that you don't take into account when building design systems. You take in purpose and intent for the user, but
Mhm.
purpose and intent as AI would understand it. So AI is
Yeah.
gonna, it understands like, okay, you want this to be color and primary button, but it doesn't know why it's a primary button. It just knows it's a primary button. So in these instances, we're kind of telling it like what it is and what it should be doing and what the expectations are, to kind of feed a little bit of that additional knowledge that is needed besides it just knowing that this button should be white and this text should be red, that kind of stuff. So
Got it.
we leverage that from this description. And then also it's helpful if you wanted to go into each one of these instances, you can also add descriptions for those as well. So the more documentation, the better. It will suck up your context window from the whatever AI client you're using. So be aware of that. So it helps to have a pro account for Cursor or Claude Code or whatever tool you're using. So the first
Makes sense.
thing that I'll do in here is I'll run this FigmaLint. So I'm highlighting the banner component here, and the first step I'll do is analyze the banner component. And the idea is I want to get it like above 90. Like that would be ideal to be able to feel okay about starting the process of moving this into a code base. But look at that, I got 100. That's
Wow.
a great score. It's got one hard-coded value, but sometimes what it's doing is we use this plugin called PropStar that adds like this expanded true, and sometimes it'll detect those things on there too. So
Okay.
I ignore that. It's got a 99 out of 100. It's just getting dinged for that one hard-coded value in there. But everything else is great. It's showing the one hard-coded value. It's showing the 29 total used tokens,
Mhm.
29 total items out of 28 on here. And then these are all the different tokens that it's finding. I have some updates that we're doing to this too to help actually generate things like properties and various metadata for the component. Okay, so what I normally do is I go here and then I go to copy paste and then I grab this copy link to selection. So this feels like it's good to go. Then I will transition over into Cursor. So this is our design system. It's called Altitude Design System.
Okay.
We have a web component version, which
Okay.
is the main one that we use. And then we have a React version, which is basically React wrapped web components. So at the
Okay.
under the hood, it's really a web
Mhm.
component that's powering it. And then what I do for every component is I have just kind of like a generic um, template that I use to help with the prompt. This basically says, please generate a banner component complete with, this is the URL that I had copied. And I'm saying, use the Figma MCP to extract that design. And then I'm giving it just a quick component overview. This isn't completely necessary, but I like to do this because it feels like I'm doubling down on it. Most of this stuff, it's going to extract it straight from what the MCP provides to it. These are some implementation guidelines. Like I wanted to generate it in a banner directory here. We're using CSS modules for this. It has some composability in there. I want it to reference other buttons. I want it to copy as is, meaning like exactly what you see in Figma MCP
Yes.
is true. That's the source of truth. I want it to be exactly like that. I don't want it to start deviating, creating all these other rules and styles. So yeah, it does a little accessibility checking, and then it makes sure that we're using the correct tokens, and then it's putting it in this development area over here. So I'm going to copy this, and then I'm going to go right here, and then hit enter. And then this is the part that might take a little while.
Yeah.
So I can kind of narrate what happens here. So it does a little thinking about what it's doing, and then now it's calling this MCP tool. And then
Mhm.
this is the JSON payload that you get back. So it's reading what the code that is being interpreted on the Figma side. So that's all in
Mhm.
this get code. When it's saying get code, it's getting the code that Figma produced. And then it says get image, which is this is the actual image of the component that I showed you earlier uh,
Yeah.
from Figma. And
Mhm.
then it's getting the variable. Ooh, can't click it open. It's moving too fast. So these are the typography styles. This is grabbing all, not typography, these are the token styles. So it's looking at all of these ones that are Figma default native styles that are in there, and variables, and going through. And then
I think it's really interesting to me that there is a lot of level of detail that goes into it. And most people I see on the internet right now, they're just doing it for the vibes. But the more, you're showing me, the more I'm realizing the difference between vibe designing and actually contextually
This is
designing these.
this is not
Yeah,
vibe.
this is
There's
not
no
vibe at
vibing.
all.
I know exactly what I want and how I want it. So I'm being very explicit in the detail for this one.
Yes.
But you can see the thought process of how it's going through all of this. I'm showing you this on, so this is a pretty straightforward way that we're generating this one.
Mhm.
When we use Claude Code for more compose structures, we actually
Okay.
have a series of subagents that we run that once this whole series is checked out,
Mhm.
then the subagents run, and they do things like checking the code that was developed, looking for things like components that were recreated, like if it's like recreating something like an icon button or a drop down, then it goes and searches back in the code base in the component directory to see if there's anything that's able to be leveraged. And this is
Does
live. I
it?
just want to let whoever's watching
Yes.
this know now that this is happening right now. And
While
it's
it is being generated, I had another thing that I wanted to ask. I've realized that whenever we're just prompting, there's a lot of bad code that is also getting generated because it's not clean. It's just, looking at something in isolation and it might not really align with the larger system that you're creating. So how do you tackle that, considering that this is just one small thing and you're working on something larger with this small thing?
So the small thing is a part of a larger thing. The process that I take with this, and then this metaphor could be taken in life in general. This is like the idea of atomic habits. It's all the
Mhm.
little small things that help with building the larger
Mhm.
things. Focusing on the fundamentals, getting all of the fundamentals in place. And when I say that, I mean like getting your environment set up to be able to have AI do its best. So that way it doesn't like a well-organized taxonomy folder structure, like documenting everything and not just in like Markdown or JSON or wherever you put documentation, but like comments in your code, making sure
Mhm.
that everything is explicitly defined in there along the way. We double check everything all the time. There isn't anything that goes through into our production environment without having multiple people manually check things. I like to monitor what's going on
Mhm.
here this
Mhm.
whole time. And every once in a while, I'll check in to see what's going on in these little stories as they're being developed to ensure that all of this stuff is being developed correctly. But once all these little things are in place and then you get to that larger piece, you could feel more confident about how it's being created in knowing that it's going to function or at least function to a certain percentage of the expectation of what it would end up being. I think some of the issues with vibe coding and people get so upset about it not working the way they intended to is that they bite off so much. The output is only as good as the input. So when you vibe code something, you're building it as you talk to it. So there's not a whole lot of technical implementation that you're upfront providing it. It's
Mhm.
getting context as you're providing context. While this is happening in an
Mhm.
actual project situation, we'd probably be working on whatever the requirements are for the next component or prepping
Okay.
it and getting it ready. And then these always get dumped into like a development portion of the storybook navigation. So that's where this is going to end up in storybook.
Makes sense. And how has the process changed between how designers and developers coordinate on these things? Who does what? And then considering that now designers can also code with tools.
I think definitely efficiency is one of those
Mhm.
for designers and developers. There's the elusive, design to development gap. Things
Yes.
like FigmaLint help bring people closer together to help discuss things that were otherwise left to developers to figure out because there may have been something on a design side that fell short. So, depending on the personality of the developer, they would either raise a flag and go to the product owner or project manager and say, hey, this is incomplete. Go back to the
Mhm.
designer to figure it out. Or they might be like, well, that's fine. I'll just fix it myself. But then when you take that mentality, you've already started that rift. So like now
Yeah.
you no longer have a single source of truth. Now you have like a design source of truth and a development source of truth. And now it's doing its thing and this is doing its thing. And so now when there's an edit being done in design, you have to bring in that edit and then overlap whatever additional development that you have to do to it that was slightly different from the way it was originally
Hmm.
designed because it was missing some properties or some metadata. So it's just all things that need to take into consideration. So I like I like providing as much context up front so that way we're able to keep that cascade downstream as efficient as possible. That design to development gap, especially with FigmaLint, helps if there are teams that communication isn't their strong suit, because
Mhm.
at least we have a tool that'll tell you that it's good to go. You
Mhm.
can trust that if the tool says it's good to go, then it should be good to go.
Makes
Um,
sense.
so this finished its creation. So it gives you a nice little output here saying these are the files that it created, this TypeScript file, this SCSS file, and then the stories that it created with it. And if we take a peek in here, this is the CSS file, which looks good. It's using the same syntax. I'll just keep this so I can move it. So it references the other files that we have, and this is exactly the way that we like to write it even got it down to like using these parent selectors. These are nested parent selectors in SCSS, and
Mhm.
this is the way that we prefer to write it.
Okay.
And it's using all of our tokens that are in here, which is great. So, and even like even the way we put this little flower box comment up here and how it's importing these styles, that's awesome. Story documentation, it put it in the development navigation, and these are all the different stories that it's pulling in. Looks like we're going to have a good bit in there. And then this is the main TypeScript file. Looks like it's pulling in the button component, which it detected that it already existed, pulling in these chevron icons or chevron for the collapsible piece, and then all these different warning icons that are in there. That it's mapping the elements to components, which is great. And then it's showing the different variants, which are defined in the props. Default banner title, but it's text title, but it's defaulting the banner description, all these different pieces. And then what it does is it automatically generates. So this is Storybook, and then usually pops it down here. So here's the banner. And then here we are. So
Okay.
this is the banner that it created. Looks like there might be left a little extra room down there and it did miss there was a part of something was down there. I don't know why it's flashing like that. And there's one with the longer description field at the
Mhm.
bottom. And here's some other variants on there. Normally it puts, oh, there's a there's a button in there, it's just hidden somewhere. We might need to put like a width on it. And then there's some adjusting that we have to do with some padding at the bottom. But just getting this far in it this feels like it's 85% of the way there. So
Yeah.
if you look at it from here, what you see in here, and then keep in mind this is zoomed in a lot, but that's
Hmm.
pretty spot on. There's some
Hmm.
minor
Yeah.
tweaks that we have to do in here, and sometimes the way that we tweak things is just through further prompting. So we can
Okay.
say, look into the CSS to see what's going on with the icon button and let me know some reasons why it wouldn't be displaying. And then we could workshop it together to say, do what we need to do to be able to display it. So that's the MCP flow. That one
Mhm.
particularly isn't the norm. Normally we get it at least with the button where you can toggle it open and close, but this is a live demo and that's kind of the way things go.
Yeah. So this is pretty cool, awesome, honestly. I was curious, have you found any other tools that sort of bridge the gap between design and developers and then testing things and then back to design? Any in between tools like FigmaLint?
There's a lot of stuff has already been there that we've worked with.
Mhm.
Style Dictionary is one that we felt like was um, the first lifeline that was casted from development to design or design to development, depending on which side you're on. Uh, it was like a thread, like it was very small, but it was a way that we can like actually take styles that were created on the Figma side where designers were doing things like creating essentially variables, like what we as developers would be referring to as variables, and assigning them names for things, so they were able to assign color values and text values. And then we would use a tool like Style Dictionary to be able to
Mhm.
pull all those values through Figma's
Mhm.
API through Style Dictionary, and then with a couple of scripts and customizations, you can parse all of that data from the API results into whatever styling format you wanted. So we often use mostly custom properties. CSS custom properties is what we end up translating that into. Although for every project kind of has their own specific, unique way of wanting to style their components. But that was like the first thing. And then it really wasn't until we had this tool that we used early on with a colleague of mine named Kevin Coyle, who put together this tool called Generator Lab, which used YAML files, but it wasn't connected to Figma. It was us humans putting together these YAML files to describe the actual component as best we could, and like kind of copy and paste some styles from Figma into that YAML file. And that did a pretty good job of generating the component. And then we created a VS Code extension called Figma Bridge. And then that took a personal access token for Figma, and it used the Figma API, but it worked really similar to the MCP. But this is before MCPs had come out. So you would just paste that canonical link to the Figma component, and then that would extract the JSON that described basically all the data surrounding that component. And then we would pull it into an agentic or AI ready client like Cursor or Windsurf. And then we would say, reference this JSON to be able to create a React version of this banner, base it on the sibling components that you see within this directory. And then that was awesome, because then that would get us a good part of the way there. Then another Figma MCP came out, but it wasn't the official Figma MCP. It was one called FrameLink that's still out there now, which is great. You could use it. It's free. It does almost the same thing as the official MCP from Figma. And that was like the moment when it was like, okay, this is legit. Like we could start using this. And then from that point on, we haven't looked back. Like the majority of everything that we do now is all context engineered.
Makes sense.
And then from that point on, yeah, it got into like creating other things. We created a tool called Story UI, which is basically a way for us to test these quickly created components within a more composed structure. So like if we wanted to create a template of cards, or we wanted to create a grid of banners, or just component inventory, if we just wanted to say, all right, you created the button. It's got 16 variations, and it's got, 5 different states. It's got, all these different conditions of like icon in the front, icon in the back, both icons, 3 icons, 50 icons, whatever it might be. Generate all the things, and then Story UI would just go and then create all the stuff for us. And that was a cool way, because that saved a lot of developer time in creating all these individual stories. But although Figma MCP has gotten really good at predicting what you want. So like as you saw with the banner, it created like 5 different variants, like 5 different story variants for each banner. What I could have said is like create a story that just shows every banner on that one page, and then it would have did that. But Story UI kind of picks up where that leaves off.
Okay, nice. I'm learning a lot from you. I'm definitely going to check out everything that you mentioned today. So I see that you've been dabbling with a lot of these tools, not just like right now, not just after the boom, but you've been dabbling with them. So what do you think is the next thing that you are excited about, that you
Um,
think will come next?
I think the first and most obvious thing is going to be further refinement.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of the things that I'm sending to AI, because I feel like it needs it, like in that prompt that I was showing you, that I put together to carefully, articulate where the directories are to get these things and how to do it. And I think the next soonest thing that'll likely happen is that I won't need to have that detailed of a prompt. In fact, like it's been a while since I've done it without it. I feel like with this new Opus 4.1, some of the later models, because we've been doing this since before Sonnet 3.5, like this was earlier, and with some of these newer models, I probably could just pop a link in there. I mean, like if you take this banner, like this banner probably would have taken, I don't know, it's not that hard, maybe 3 days to put together, like to really grab your ticket, move it into the ready column, and then just start churning away on it. 3
Mhm.
working days, maybe 1. I don't know, depending on how fast you are. But really, to get it in a point to where you can design QA it and then functional QA it, like realistically, we always try to pad these things because a lot of time there's a lot of back and forth with a lot of this stuff.
Mhm.
But just to get it in the state that it is right now, we could say at a minimum 2 days. But we just did it within, I don't know, 10 minutes. So
Yeah.
10 minutes at 80% completed, that's a pretty good. That's I
Yeah.
mean, like when you accumulate that over the course of 50 to 60 components, whatever your average component library consists of, then the savings are huge.
Yes, yes. I like how you treated it like atomic design and you broke it down from atoms, molecules, and because most people, me myself included, I was just building features, if not the entire thing all together all at once.
Well, features are
So
the
I
fun
think
part. That's the
yes.
but you gotta work your way to that.
Yes, yes. So I think that is a major takeaway for myself that I'll break it down even further and build it one step at a time rather than building it all together. Especially from a design perspective, because I feel like from a idea validation perspective, just quickly building things and just testing them, that's great. But when you're actually doing the design bit of making everything visually perfect, making sure everything is working, then you need to break it down.
Yeah, and it's trial and error, until you
Yes.
find that sweet spot. It took us for a long time to be able to figure out the full picture of how this thing should be built. And we've
Mhm.
gone through and documented like the majority of this stuff for a lot of these different components because at the end of the day, most design systems share like 60% of the components from one design system
Yes.
to another design system, which is
Yes.
kind of why we created Altitude, because it
Mhm.
starts with like 60% of the components that are available in most design systems. And so we go in and we tweak the token structures, or we just re-import whatever the newer token values are. And then this one specifically is for web component based, but we have a React one and Angular one
Mhm.
and some other
Mhm.
flavors that we like to use. Now, right now, Story UI is only available on the React version, but we do intend to extend it and open it up to web components, Angular, and Vue, and maybe Svelte at some point.
Mhm. Do you ever feel like a dependency on AI to ideate or just, not think of corner cases because AI will take care of it?
Um, it gives us an easier means to ideate
Mhm.
because it allows us to do it asynchronously. And I think it's a more efficient process to ideate because it sparks creativity and you might be able to get some ideas from it that you hadn't been able to. And then we're all for good brainstorming sessions when we're like in a group, but I feel like it allows me to bring so much more to the table in that brainstorming session because I'm like everything that I was thinking of is amplified now by AI. So the amount of ideas are enriched through all of us. So if it's 6 of us in a brainstorming session and we all do our research, very focused research, then when we come to the table, we've all got ideas. And now it's just a matter of understanding what's like the business decisions that need to be made or architectural decisions that need to be made, factoring in long modularity and scalability and longevity and resource team sizes, all that kind of stuff.
Makes sense. Yeah, it was really amazing. I've learned a lot. I'm going to be experimenting with a lot of things.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You can follow
Yes.
me on LinkedIn, and I usually post all my demos and for good or for bad. So just showing everybody how everything's made, whether it works or it doesn't. But happy to have you along for the ride.
Yes. Thank you so much.